Yes, there is a recording in progress, as the ghostly voice has informed me. Welcome to this sunlit morning at the end of the week. We've survived
Yeah,
another week, Pat. What about that?
which yeah.
Isn't that
Just
something?
I was listening to Barra Best on BBC last night, and he
Yeah.
says Saturday could be barbecue day. You
Oh,
know,
we've had to
uh,
wait for it for a long time, though, haven't we?
uh, so somebody said to me one time, why do they never have barbecues in Donegal? And I sort of said, you'd have to have them in the garage because you could certainly not have them outside. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. It's I was saying Indian summer, and I was wondering if
yeah.
that was politically
Is
correct.
that politically correct anymore?
Is
By
it
the way,
referring?
did that refer to the American Indians or to
That's what I was going to say. Would it have been India Indians, or would it
uh,
have been the old-fashioned term for
by the
indigenous?
way, Dr. Collins, just now you mentioned, isn't it? We had Australians staying here, and they don't refer to Aborigines anymore as Aborigines. We had a guy here, he was a school teacher, and he referred to them as First Nation.
Aye,
And then what we used to call them Red Indians or American Indians, they're now what is they call Native Americans.
aye. Well, in Canada, they keep changing it in Canada, but I think at present it's First Nation people.
Yeah,
First Nation, yeah, I think it's First Nation.
yeah.
Anyway, we could talk forever about this thing about being politically correct. I think it's sometimes carried too far, and many people just make innocent mistakes, as it were, as to what is the
Yeah.
current term. And
They're sort of crucified for it, exactly.
exactly
Yeah.
they're pursued. Okay, we're going to look at a number of things. What was you said we should start with, Pat?
I think there was a program on RTE on Monday night.
Oh
It was called
yes, yes.
Stole. And by the way, the woman behind it is a woman called Margot Harkin. She's a documentary maker and a filmmaker. She's from Derry.
Oh,
Do you know,
aye.
I know, I watched it. I, I was shocked, but not surprised. Do you know, I sat and watched it and I thought to myself, how many more programs like this are going to come out? Let's get this clear, Jude. It was about the survivors of mothers and babies' homes in Ireland. And Jude, it struck me one more time the cruelty of those running those places was bordering on barbarism. The way they treated people.
Were these the Nazareth nuns?
There were nuns and there were priests. There was one girl, away from the institution. She knew she got pregnant and she was going out with a guy who played in a dance band or something, and she went off to England. But anyway, she obviously went to church in England, and there was an Irish community there. And she says when they found out she was 2 or 3 months pregnant, the priest, she says, literally punched her up the steps of a plane to make sure she got on the plane to go home again. No, she wasn't going to be a fallen woman in England and all that sort of stuff. But the whole thing, the more I no wonder the Catholic Church has lost all status, whatever way you want to pronounce that word, in Ireland. The more I thought about it, I thought, such absolute cruelty. And but here's the big point. After it was over, I had you gone on social media, there were some people still coming on and saying they harkened back to those halcyon days when there was respect for the church and people obeyed the rules and all that. And I thought to myself, no, I don't want those days back. Not at all. Dude, the cruelty was unbelievable. And by the way, a high percentage of the babies, I think it was about on the average in the community, there was 3% deaths of childbirth and infancy, and the homes it was 15-20%, and on top of that, a lot of the women, children died despite the fact that the government was providing a subvention. They died from lack of feeding. Imagine children dying. And by the way, and then in Tuam, and it's a fact, I think it's 796 were found buried in a sewer tank. And one of the women told she was sitting one day and a wee fella came up with a skull on a stick. And what he called, she says, where'd you get that? He says, down to the bottom of the garden. They were close to where her mother and baby home, and they'd just been thrown into some sort of dung heap or something.
Were these babies that had come to full term?
Yeah, they were born and then they died because they weren't getting enough feeding, and and so on.
Well, wait a minute now, Pat. Why did they die in out of sync with the normal population.
Yes, whatever the terms and conditions of if that's the way I can put it, I think they weren't. The hygiene wasn't great. The food wasn't great. As the children got sick, doctors weren't called. They weren't looked after properly, etc., etc., etc. The death rate in the hospital in the homes was way, way above that out in the ordinary community. And I thought about it. These are the people we used to look up to. These are the people we used to put on pedestals. And the hypocrisy, saying one thing and doing another.
Yeah, I would agree with that. That given the fact that you say you're a Christian or you're a Christian leader, which I suppose the clergy or the nuns might say, it's really is kind of appalling that these things happen under their watch. However, I would say, I haven't seen this one, but I would add to that the fact that we must be careful looking back to a time which was different from now. I would say, for example, I would say that my mother, if she probably must have known. I never knew of anybody being pregnant outside of marriage, but I would bet that my mother and certainly my grandmother would have had a fit if she had thought that anybody living near us, not alone any of my 5 sisters, was pregnant outside marriage.
Yeah.
So it's in that kind of setting that this kind of horrible sort of event is possible, where people are supposed to be taken in to be protected and in fact are seriously abused. But Pat, the thing I notice is this: you and I would know, well, I know anyway, that there was physical abuse in
Absolutely.
Catholic institutions. I mean, but there's physical abuse, I suspect. Well, I don't know. I was going to say, would there have been the same amount of physical abuse in state schools or Protestant schools as there was in Catholic schools? There certainly was a lot of physical abuse in Catholic schools, that's for sure.
Yeah. Well, I know there was in the Republic, there used to be I went to St. Eunan's, but there was this thing called the vocational education schools, which were the non-religious. And I know there was certainly a lot less corporal punishment in those schools.
A lot less?
A lot less, a hell of a lot less.
Yeah, that's interesting. Well, who ran those, or were those?
Well, each county, usually there was a County Donegal Vocational Education Committee. I think most counties had their own vocational education committee. Now they were state schools, but they were run by individual counties. And I think it's under, is it ETB, Educational Transfer? I can't remember. No, it's a centralized body that runs them. But each county has their own sort of funding and so on.
Yeah. What would you look at priests today, or nuns for that? Well, there's very few of them, but would you look at them in a different light, in the light of a program like that?
Absolutely, Jude. I've lost faith totally in the whole system. Jude, you know one thing, and I'm saying this deadly serious. My mother would have been one of the old style conservative Catholics. We said the rosary. I've mentioned this before, but we said the rosary. In childhood, we said the rosary every evening and all that sort of stuff. And seeing when all the scandals and all the rest, one day, and she was probably in her 90s or near enough in her 90s at that stage, she actually said, I wonder, is there anything at all up there or out there? She had lost, and I actually felt very bad for her, because, when you're getting towards the end of your life at that stage, she was looking for comfort. Yeah. And she had believed all this for so long. And, I'm sure she still believed it, but at that stage of her life, she was no longer the sort of confident, there's definitely a God, because she had been so disillusioned by what had gone on. She had read scandal after scandal after scandal.
Yeah, I see. I remember talking to a priest about this, and he sort of brushed it aside. But I said, I don't quite understand why people would give up on their faith, say their Catholic faith, that they give up on their Catholic faith because there was corruption and really vicious and nasty stuff like that at the heart of, or at least in areas of, the Catholic Church. Because it does seem to me that a belief in a God or not belief in a God is a separate thing from how good or how bad are some clergy or some nuns. They're different things, really. The other thing about belief is I'm beginning to, I'm reading a book about it at the moment. And if you think about it, if you say, I believe, that's not something you can control, really, is it?
Yeah.
No. You either do or you don't.
Yeah.
So there's no, so, does God pick out some people and say, you can believe, or allow you to believe, or encourage you to believe, and some others it doesn't? Or is it is that really belief at all? I remember John McGahern, you know, the novel. He said that one of the characters talks about priests in it, and he says, "Well, I never met one of them that wasn't afraid to die." And I thought that was a telling phrase. But I mean, by its nature, you know, faith has to be uncertain. Like, I remember I had a prof in UCD, Dennis Donahue. In fact, he was the father of, you remember Emma Donahue that did that?
They wrote the book.
I was doing a minor thesis about George Orwell's fiction, and then one of them was this Church of England clergy, Church of England laywoman, and she was terribly devout. She was a vicar's daughter or something. And then one morning she woke up and her faith in God was gone. And I remember him saying, and I never thought of it this way. He said, Dennis Donahue said, well, of course, you have to remember, like, faith is a leap in the dark. I thought that was a very good description, you know.
Absolutely.
Because it's sort of terrifying on the one hand. On the other hand, there's no other way to go about it. I mean, by definition.
You see, where I would cut across you on this one is, of those leading the church, and they're like the sort of the captains of the ship.
Yeah.
And if the captain of the ship is leading it in the wrong direction, you want to get off.
Well, yes, I can understand it, but I still think it's illogical. You know, I don't think I would want to get off the ship because the captain was a bugger. I mean, it would be bad news. I might drown if I got off. But anyway, I would agree with you on all that you say. I've no doubt this was terrible cruelties, and sexual abuse was inflicted on any number of people. But I would also say that, you know, people sometimes say, oh, they went into that because they knew they could abuse, or, you know, they have a soft life, you know, the cushy number. Well, you know, I look at priests that I know around here, and I tell you, it looks to me like a hard enough life. Now, they're financially secure, but God, it must be a lonely life too. Because, you know, as you say, you're forever getting programs like this that are pointing out the horrible things that are done in the past. And in a way, people go and say, you know, because this happened in the past for these people, you priest or you nun, I see you the same way. And that's a bit unfair. You know,
that is, of course it is,
It's like saying your grandfather kicked my grandfather and you're just as bad. Okay.
Exactly.
Have we kicked that one to death enough?
I'll kick that one to death now. Let's move on.
Well, let's move on to Colum Eastwood. Now, is this the fashion or something? Or the leaders are changing, like, I don't know what, like changing underwear. We had Simon Harris in the South. We have Keir Starmer in England. And now we have Colum Eastwood here. And I forgot the Ulster Unionists as well. So Colum Eastwood is giving up and going to pass the baton and is assumed it's going to go to Claire Hanna. Here's a question. He doesn't answer the question. He's asked the question, why is he doing it? And he just says, essentially, he felt this was the right time. In other words, mind your own business. Why do you think he gave up power? Like, he's only 41.
Yeah, well, he's been the leader for 9 years. Excuse me. And he's been, and I think he joined the SDLP around the time of the Good Friday Agreement. He was about 17 or 18. He was elected when he was 21 or 22 to Derry City Council. I think he was the youngest councillor ever. He was mayor at a very young age, and he took over at a very young age. And he said himself, he has a young family. He's an MP. And I think, presume between one thing and another, going over and back to England all the time, must be a difficulty. And then he said the work involved in being leader, he says people just don't realise the day-to-day stuff and so on. Now, there's all sorts of things. The other thing is, of course, Jude, is the SDLP were once, the people that did the heavy lifting, the UEP and the SDLP for the Good Friday Agreement. Like basically they're gone. And Jude, I've always remembered, and I can't even, it was a British politician said to me, I can't remember which one it was. And he said one day, the problem is, he says, you have to deal with this, the substance, not the shadow. And I sort of said, what do you mean? He says, well, the real problem, he says, is reconciling their irreconcilables. And I said, what's that? He says, well, he says, until you can get the DUP and Sinn Féin into the one room. He says, and sort it out. He says, you want a peace. He says, we know that the SDLP will nearly agree to anything. The UUP will agree to most things. It's the DUP and Sinn Féin who are not agreeing, and their supporters. So the whole British effort and the Irish government's efforts were to talk to Gerry Adams and Martin McGuinness and Ian Peter Robinson, and they sidelined the people who had brought the agreement together, and all the focus, the laser-like focus, went on those two parties to the exclusion of the SDLP and the UUP, and that's where we are today.
But then you see again, I agree with you, and both parties really declined from the point where the Good Friday Agreement was signed, and they now are nowhere in comparison to the DUP or Sinn Féin. But at the same time, the SDLP had a little bounce. I mean, they did. Sinn Féin did very badly in Derry, comparatively speaking, and it looked like the SDLP were doing reasonably well. And Colum Eastwood was, returned. I'm just thinking, his age is 41, right? Yeah. Joe Biden's age is 81.
Yeah.
And they practically, no matter what he says and no matter what the supporters maintain about what the Great Patriotic Act he did by resigning, he had to be dragged kicking and screaming away from the seat of power. They had to actually break his fingers before they could get him.
They had to prise his fingers individually off the
exactly.
seat.
And that's the way it is with power. I really believe this sincerely. When you get a taste of power, it's very, very hard to go back. As Colum Eastwood is going to have to go back, and he's going to not have the final say in things in the SDLP. There must be more reasons than that. Maybe.
Well, right. They got a wee bounce in Derry because Colum regained the seat from Sinn Féin, but there are a whole lot of local issues.
Well, you got a big bounce because he won by 17,000, but that then is right down to 4,000.
4,000 at the last election now. But they also, I think they're now down to 8 assembly members. They all are conquering SDLP, and I think they're down to something like 39 councillors across the north. Like 39 councillors, Jesus, they nearly had that many in Derry at one stage. They had 16 or something in Derry at one stage, if I remember correctly. So, in a way, he's sort of presiding over decline.
Well, that's exactly it. Yes. In charge of a dying animal, if that's the case, and I suspect it is, then that's the reason he's left. And it's going to be difficult. Well, this is how I see it. You know better because you're on the ground there in Derry. But I would have thought that if Colum Eastwood resigns as leader, but remains as MP, will there still be the same impetus to vote for him as there was when he was leader of the party? I mean, will he not? I don't think he improves the chances.
No, in a certain status, our MP is the actual leader of the SDLP.
Exactly.
And let's get this clear that I saw quite a few years ago, there was a program in RTE where the leaders of the North were invited onto it. And Colum Eastwood was the best performer by a mile, And on several occasions recently, and even a different broadcast, he's a superb performer when they stick a camera in front of him. And in fact, he's excellent. So there's that. But no, the other thing is, there's one wee thing that I think is overlooked. I was on a program yesterday on Radio 4, but it's one thing I forgot to mention. They were selecting the mayor of Derry, Lillian O'Brien, who's the first black lady to be elected to that position, and anywhere northern. 2 of the local councillors, long-standing, I think it's Jason Barr and Shauna, what do you call her? Oh, geez, their name has gone out of my head. It doesn't quickly. It doesn't matter. They resigned, and it caused a lot of local ill feeling about the way it was handled. Now, it's not because of Lillian's okay, but a lot of SDLP people felt the way it was done was seriously, and I think that might have had a bigger effect on Colum and a lot of people, because he got a lot of personal abuse locally about all that. Some people think it's all these big issues, the big macro issues, but sometimes the thing that gets to you is the micro issue, the one that's at your own doorstep.
I think you're a good point, right? It's back. You're back again to this thing about there's the opposition and there's the enemy. It's really your own is always the worst. But anyway, we're only conjecturing. You can't be sure about that. But here's what I'll maybe just finally ask this question: will this be good for the SDLP's political health, or will it be bad?
Jude, I don't think it's good. Like Claire, I think Claire Hanna is without question an absolutely superb MP.
Well, he
Every
described
time
her on Nolan this morning as a star, and I thought he was
I,
dead right. He got
I
the
thought
word for her,
absolutely.
star.
She is. I have seen her and heard her performing on various programs, and like one day I'm talkback. The reason she absolutely destroyed Jim Allister. Jim Jim trying to portray the antediluvian 17th century policies that the only people that count in Northern Ireland are those who are unionists.
Yeah.
She absolutely destroyed him. She basically told me I need to grow up. But anyway, she's got real ability. She's very reasonable. She looks good. The only thing is she's a mother of three, which I presume takes up a lot of her time. She's an MP, which I presume takes up a lot of her time. Does she need another job?
I actually, well, I think if she takes a job, it'll be, I think, for the sake of the SDLP. If
I
she
think so
doesn't
too.
take the job, I would really worry for the SDLP if I was an SDLP member. Now, I know we have this guy, what's his name with the red hair?
Matthew O'Toole.
Matthew O'Toole. Now, Matthew O'Toole is in a long tradition, and you said it with regard to Colum Eastwood, a long tradition of SDLP leaders who are very fluent, very articulate. John Hume was very articulate. The man that followed him,
Seamus Mallon.
no, not Mallon.
Mark Durkin.
Mark Durkin. Mark Durkin had a turn of phrase, was fantastic. Colum Eastwood, and so on. So there's a lot of, but somehow or another, they never quite, it was hard to, I find it hard to warm to them. Like John Hume, there was a certain detachment about John. If we take the other people who come later, they used to have wonderfully effective speaking styles, and they used to have some of the funniest little metaphors or remarks, compressed. And yet, somehow or another, you didn't warm to them as a political leader. Is that just me, or is that what you?
No, that's true. But you said something there, John Hume. In that program yesterday, John Tong was on it, and Professor Deirdre Heenan was on it. We're on it, and both of them said the same: that Hume's shadow still looms over the SDLP. He was a giant, and no matter who comes after him, they're going to look like a pygmy. That's the reality of it.
Well, I must say, I would have thought Claire Hanna, if other circumstances were right, she could have been a really, really effective leader. But you see, again, even she was an effective leader. It's hard to see once parties go on a serious decline and are eclipsed by another party. It's very hard to see them coming back. I'll give you a quick example of this, and that is the Ulster Unionist Party are going to reappoint Mike
Nesbitt.
Nesbitt. I should know him. I used to know him in the BBC. Mike Nesbitt. No, not that Mike Nesbitt isn't a very effective speaker. In fact, he's very articulate. And to some degrees, he comes off as a reasonably nice guy. But will he make will there be an upsurge in support for the UUP? I don't think so.
But Jude, here's the thing, and it's a simple rule, right? If you're a nationalist sitting in Castlederg or Ballymena or somewhere in West Belfast or the Bogside in Derry or somewhere in Strabane, and you look and say, right, here's the thing: if I want Michelle O'Neill and who's the best chance of becoming First Minister? It's Sinn Féin. I am going to vote for them. So are you if you're a nationalist, on the basis that we want our people on the seat of power. You look at the SDLP and say they haven't a hope of getting into First Minister, so I'm not going to vote for them. And Jude, that's what's happening. It's ebbing away all the time from the SDLP, because most people say, "What's the point in voting for the SDLP?" We now, for the first time ever, we've got this woman, Michelle O'Neill, as First Minister in Northern Ireland. And we like that. And more people are saying, look, what's the point? And that's the reality of it, because the SDLP, no matter what they do, are never going to, unless Sinn Féin implodes, the SDLP, I think the chances of Claire Hanna ever becoming First Minister or whatever is about null.
Well, I have heard Republicans who have said that actually it's a good thing that the SDLP does exist, because it keeps Sinn Féin on their toes. And that case in Derry that we talked about, where Sinn Féin had a disastrous election. I think that was largely out of complacency.
Yeah, well, you see, there was a whole lot of stuff going on in the background. Alicia
that wouldn't have happened because only they were complacent in the first place.
Yeah, well, there's more than that. There was claims of nepotism and all sorts of stuff going on, and corruption and Sinn Féin, in the sense that they were looking after their friends for jobs and whatever and so on. Yeah. And a lot of people, I think at one stage there was an SDLP guy sent me this thing. He says, all the NGOs in Derry know that, and he says, look who's in charge, everyone, and every one of them. He says, and they used to talk about the unionists sort of looking after their own. He says the sinners are far more, and they got a real slap in the mouth, big time. When they lost a majority, big time. Colum Eastwood got a bigger vote than John Hume. He had a 17,000 majority over Sinn Féin.
Yeah, but you see, as a result of that, Sinn Féin have been working very hard, and they've cut Colum Eastwood's majority down to 4,000, from 17,000 down to 4,000, and that's what I mean. There was a degree of complacency there. And because they got a slap in the mouth, 17,000 slaps in the mouth, and they changed their tune, and they really addressed it. So I'm not sure. Sometimes I think it's good, and sometimes I think it's not so good that there is the SDLP to, if you like, just keep an eye on Sinn Féin. You could argue that at least. But anyway, it's a thankless sort of job. I don't know how Claire Hanna could possibly do that job. I don't know how she could do it at present with 3 children, and I don't know how the hell she could do it if she was the leader of the party as well. But it looks like she's going to be. Otherwise, Colum Eastwood wouldn't have spoken out as he did, and said immediately she was going to. Right, let's move on to just 10 minutes left. And before moving on, I forgot to say at the beginning, Pat, everybody, look at me. Okay, pay attention, class. Look beneath the screen, and you will see the little panel says subscribe. Right. Don't do anything. Don't listen to us. Don't go to the toilet. Don't go and have a cup of tea. Hit that button, subscribe, and then you will always know when Pat and I are putting our heads together and producing a whole brain. Okay, 2 half-wits. Okay, right, that's that. Now, Kamala Harris was interviewed on CNN TV. Is it significant that she was interviewed on CNN and not on any other channel in the States?
Well, they reckon CNN is the sort of like the Guardian, the liberal wing of the American networks, and Fox News is the right wing equivalent.
Yes. I think you're dead right. In fact, I think at times I watch CNN regularly. And I at times think, they're sort of verging on a mirror image of Fox News. They're very, very anti-Trump. Not that there isn't lots of things to be anti about. But anyway, she did it on CNN, which would be sort of friendly, if you like, towards her. So what did you didn't see it, I suppose. I didn't.
No.
On during the night.
Carry on.
But the reports, the reports say that she did good, that she did a good job, competent. She didn't make any mistakes. She talked about the good she stood by, to some extent, the good work that Joe Biden had done during his term of office. When she praised about things like clean energy and domestic manufacturing and the whole infrastructure. There's a big infrastructure program right across the states. So she praised him for that, and she sort of accepted some of the glory of that because she was the vice president. She was asked what she would do on day one, and she just said something about, I forget what the phrase was. She would create an opportunity economy. It's a bit.
You're not going to do that on day one.
It's a bit like Keir Starmer, really. Going to introduce the kind of climate where everybody will be happy. I think she has to watch herself. I still worry about Kamala Harris. I think she's kind of lightweight. Now, that's perhaps my sexism coming to the fore, but, she is, the truth is, I don't think Coach, whatever his name is, I don't think her vice president, Walz, is any genius, but it comes across as very solid and you'd feel sort of safer with him at the wheel. Do you have that sense, Pat? It's irrational, but I think it's there.
No, I don't, Jude. But I take your point. I've seen her a couple of times, and I'm not so sure. Like, there was a seriousness about Barack Obama. You knew that you were dealing with a serious. Trump was the village idiot, and so on. And Biden was a serious. But you know, somebody said to me one time, doesn't matter. You get an American president, they all have to follow basically the same rules. It's sort of like corporatism. They're going to support Israel. They're going to, bring democracy to the world and so on, and all this sort of crap. And they're going to sort of try and act the world's policeman and all this sort of stuff. And Kamala Harris has to play to that gallery. You don't get like somebody said to me one time, why doesn't she come out in favor of the Palestinians? If she did that, she wouldn't get elected. It's as simple as that. And in fact, even a lot of things due to like fracking and all the rest of it, she sort of resiled a wee bit from that as well.
That's right. That's right.
You know,
and the reason for that is because Pennsylvania has loads of
politics. Sorry,
I was going to say that the reason for that, going back on the fracking thing, she was against it, and now she's saying, well, she's not for it, but she'd be,
she's middle of the road on
but
it
you
now.
see, that's because Pennsylvania is
a swing
prime
state
site for fracking, and Pennsylvania must be one. And if she's going to, people are going to say to themselves, if I'm not going to have my job, damn sure I'm not going to vote for somebody who's going to take the job away from me. So she has to.
But by the way, just to digress, I think you mentioned about the fact that there was an incident at Arlington Cemetery, where Trump, one of his people, pushed, I think, or physically punched or pushed a National Guard member to get on it something. What's interesting, X, formerly known as Twitter, have you apparently several people tried to get something on Twitter to have a look at it, and it says this is spam. So our friend Elon Musk is now full on Trump, and he's actually using his platform X to protect. He's running railguard or shotgun for Donald Trump. So I think that's seriously dangerous.
Oh, it is. Well, there's no doubt about it. I hope that this will happen. But there was signs that with the Biden administration that they were looking seriously at breaking up these big monopolies like Facebook and Twitter and so on. And it's ridiculous that they should. I mean, there are people who admire the likes of Elon Musk or the guy that runs Facebook and say, oh, isn't that great? Look at him. He started with nothing or little. Well, they usually don't start with nothing. They usually start with a Harvard education. But apart from that, make so much money. Isn't that fantastic? And they started in their garage. Yes, it is fantastic, but it's a bad situation because they can call the shots. They can decide whether or not content is examined. They can decide who's going to get on it and who's not going to get on it. They can do all sorts of things, and it's just not good when one guy.
Musk is on a big, massive row in Brazil, where he's the High Court judge or a Supreme Court judge, and they have rules about elections in Brazil, and Musk isn't following them. So apparently they're going to pull the plug on X in Brazil. And Musk has described the judge as an evil dictator. The judge is basically saying you have to follow the rules the same as every other media in Brazil. But and by the way, Musk has also had to go about, and he says Britain's going to be a Muslim state within 10 years or something. He's on a full scale row in Australia. He's become the absolute arrogant megalomaniac that everybody said he was.
Well, I just simply would be opposed to people who have too much power. And of course, Trump's got a grip on the Republican Party, and Republicans don't recognize their own party anymore. Again, another monopoly in action. Okay, we're really running out of time here, but just one point, and that is that Trump has reposted, since we're talking about X and so on, but he has reposted an image on a social media platform that implied that Harris had traded her sexual favors to help her political career. What do you think of that, Pat?
I think that's disgusting. I really do. Like, if that's a level he's gone down to, from a man who's had absolutely confirmed sexual relationships with porn stars who's committed adultery on 3 wives.
Well, you have to admit now, wait a minute now, Pat, if he was with porn stars, it was purely on a financial basis. It wasn't that he was going to get any political favours from them.
No, but I don't think he's on any pedestal to start talking about it. Jude, to imply that, that's just cheap jibe as far as I'm concerned. Jude, like if a woman has had relationships with other people, that's her business.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. But again, you started this podcast talking about hypocrisy in the Catholic Church. And if ever there's an example of hypocrisy, it's that, the likes of Donald Trump pointing the finger and saying, that woman engaged in sex for bad reasons.
Yeah.
Come on.
By the way, the other thing, just before we go, remember, Trump was able to sort of label the Hillary Clinton. He got her and he got Biden, Sleepy Joe, and all. He hasn't been able to land. He's going cheap on Kamala Harris. He hasn't been able to land a punch on her yet. No, he hasn't been able to sort of box her into a corner.
Well, I think if I was in the Democratic Party, I'd get in there and label him first. That's what I would do. Now I know that the last first lady, Obama, Michelle Obama said, "When they go low, we go higher."
We go high.
I don't think so.
I don't think it works.
Low, kick them in the groin. I say, okay. Right.
On that note.
Okay.
Hey, by the way, the book of this
note. Oh, what? Oh, Jesus! Mine. I forgot about mine. What is it called? Fall of Giants.
It's a huge book, by the way.
Okay. Take a long time. Any big words in it?
Marmalade. Bye, Jude.